Check, hey. Check, check, check.
Their seats up front. Okay. Thank you. Okay, good afternoon. Please all rise for the national anthem.
Bayang magiliw, pero sa silanganan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, buyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupit, kita masisingil, sa lagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mo bangag, may nilang ang tula at awit sa paglayang tinamahal. Ang isang ng watawat mo'y nagumpay na nagtitigil, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pang ay magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng maraming pagsita, buhay langit sa likod. Aming ligaya naman may mamagin, at lahat ay nagdahil sa'yo.
Thank you for coming, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Christine Lau. I teach at the Department of English and Comparative Literature, College of Arts and Letters, UP Diliman. Welcome, everyone, to our forum today. To start us off, we would like to call on Dr. Vladimir Gonzalez, Director of the Likhaan ICW.
Salamat, Ma'am Christine. Pagbati sa lahat ng nakadalo ngayong araw sa panayam sa panitikan na dati pong panayam sa panitikan sa panahon ng pandemya. Ang pamagat po ng ating episode ngayon ay Popular, Literary and In Between, the Philippine Genre Fiction Today. Ang episode na ito ay bunga ng inisyatiba ng ating moderator, si Dr. Christine Vilao, kaya palapakan natin agad. Ating Ma'am Christine, na may book sa labas, baka naman, gusto yung bumili ng libro ni Ma'am Christine, ni Ma'am Tin. Siya po ang tumulong para tipunin ang mga kaibigan na nagmumula o may kaugnayan sa iba't ibang institusyon at mga organisasyon. So babanggitin ko lang po yung mga org at mga institusyon na collaborator natin ngayong araw. Philippine Genre Stories, Fiction Writers Fellowship, the Philippine Speculative Fiction Society, SEADS, The Right Ones, at syempre ang Department of English and Comparative Literature. Itong idea ng collab ay lagi nang pong ginagawa ng ICW, malaga sa amin na nakakayanin ng pondo at makinarya nito. So kung walang pondo, every year walang makinarya. Habang meron, go lang ng go, sabi nga po ni Miss Rufa May. Tingin ko kasama sa gawain ng pagpapalaganap at pagpapalalim ay ang paulit-ulit na mga proyekto ng pag-alala at pagpapaalala. Bakit po? So bilang lunsara na nais kong itawid na punto, muli ko ikukwento ang isang istorya kasama ang isang kilalang Pilipinong manunulat ng speculative fiction sa Ingles na hindi ako, si Eliza Victoria po. Binak to me pala. Si Eliza kasi ay fellow ng UP National Writers Workshop noong 2015. At itong workshop na ito ay may extension lecture. So bumibisita sa mga school para magturo. Hindi siya speaker, so nakaupo lang siya, jumoin lang para makinig. So sa extension lecture na yon, hindi ko matandaan ng eksaktong paksa, pero natatandaan kong may nagtanong sa mga mag-aaral ng binisitang paaralan. At ang tanong ay kung may mga manunulat ba sa Pilipinas na gumagamit ng mga aswang at iba pang mga halimaw o mahiwagan nila lang na iniluwal sa kaligaran ng Pilipinas. O kaya may mga salaysay ba na magtatanghal ng mga Elisa at sinabi niya ang sagot sa tanong na tungkol sa amin nagsusulat ba ng gano'ng mga kwento. Siyempre, ang sabi niya, ako, siya. So, parang doon sa tanong, ang sagot ay siya. Kasi nandun siya, hindi lang alam ng mga tao na, hindi alam ng mga kasama namin na siya yung gumagawa ng tanong ng mga kasama namin sa extension lecture. Pagkalipas ng isang taon, after 2015, so 2016, magiging panelista si Eliza sa kauna-unang Amelia Lapena Bonifacio Writers Workshop na nakatutok sa speculative fiction pa lang, so hindi pa genre fiction. Magkakaroon din ng ALBWW na mga siklo ng palihang may tutok sa romance, young adult at folklore. Wala pang horror, wala pang detective stories, wala pang masyadong mystery. So baka coming soon. Pero next year po yung adult uli ang ating gagawin. So kung interesado kayo at kayo po ay wala pang workshop na naduluhan, sumali po kayo next year. Anyway po, sabay na interesante, nakakalungkot at nakaka-excite ang realisasyong sa mismong mundong malay at aktibong nagsusulong ng pagsusulat at pagbabasa sa workshop circuit, kahit tayo po hindi natin lubos na kilala ang mga nagawa at ginagawa ng ating mga kasama. O baka mas angkop, may mga hindi pa tayo nabasa o nababasa. Nakakatoksong sabihin, favorite to ng mga bagets na nandito, mga Charles niya, mga Clara. Tinignan ba? Anyway, gusto natutokso ko sabihin na generational ito na bagay. O sa madaling sabi ay agwat ng kabataan saka katandaan. May mga hater kasi ng matanda dito eh. Lalo't marami sa mga bangayang pampanitikan. So next year meron na po kami, hindi na pan kundi bang. Bangayan sa panitikan. Kasi may dami nag-aaway online. Na okay naman. Anyway po, sa mga bangayang pampanitikan ay nakasentro madalas sa isang prominente at syempre may katandaan ng manunulat na madalas ay magsasabi ng mga linya gaya ng wala pa nagsusulat ng ganito at ganyan sa tula ng Pilipinas. O kaya, dito ako mas na-hurt minsan, wala pang naipapalabas na ganito at ganyan sa mga teatro sa Pilipinas. Kahit alam naman ng iba, madalas mga batang manunulat ito o mambabasa na meron. Bilang ako po na manunulat na nasa early 40s na nakakatawid pa sa relatibong bagong henerasyon ng nagsusulat, kahit na habang makailang beses na rin naparelisa ng ang likod na naipit at nanakit dahil sa nag-aabot ng tabo. Hindi ko na kaya yun masyado. Saka yung mga magugupit ng kuko sa paa. So medyo na-injure na po tayo sa ganitong mga panahon. Pero kaya ko pa rin makipag-usap sa mga bagets. Sa ganung klaseng estado, ang pagtatasa ko sa ganung klaseng agwat ay syempre pwede namang hubris, totoo namang yumayabang tayo minsan habang tumatanda. Pwedeng pangkalahatang kawalan na ng interes. Or actually, kasi tumatanda, nawawala ng physical na lakas. So to explore new things. Pwedeng kombinasyon at variasyon ng mga nabanggit. Kung bakit may mga hindi na napapansin o natutukoy na umiral o umiiral na pagbabago sa landscape ng ating panitikan. In short, tatanda rin tayong lahat. Pero syempre maganda kung may pinagkatutunan habang tumatanda. In the meantime, at iniisip ko may halaga rin naman ito, maaaring ituon ang pansin sa mga struktural na pagbabago sa sistema ng ating edukasyon, pamumuno, media, komersyo. Halimbawa, sa isang pag-aaral ng kasamang guro at manunulat, ang ratio po sa libro sa bookstores ay isang local na libro lamang kada 24 na librong dayuhan ang naitatampok sa ating mga kilalang bookstore. Tila malapit na malayong alaala ang 𝗩𝗶𝘀𝗶𝗃 series of 2013 na malawakan nag-aalis ng mga kursong pampanitikan na required sa kolehiyo. Habang ngayon, sinusulong pa rin ang mga reforma sa pagtutuloy o pagpapatuloy ng pagbabawas ng general education subjects. Lampas 100 araw na noong nasiwalat ang mga anomalya sa flood control projects, ngunit wala pa rin aktwal na nakukulong o napaparusahan. Ano pa kaya ang kahihinatnan kung maisiwalat ang mga hindi maayos na kalagayan ng mga silid-aralan ng bayan? So, flood control nga na nalulunod, wala pa. Schools natin na pangit, hindi maisiwalat. Paano tayo magpapasigla ng pagbabasa at pagsusulat? Sa ganitong mga hamon, pumapasok tayo na sa likhaan at ang ating mga kapanalig, kinikilala ang mga dambuhalang hamon sa sistema at istruktura, habang pinupuna rin ang mga harang at tabing dulot ng edad, posisyon sa lipunan, mga takot at agam-agam na makiugnay at matuto sa iba. Kaya mahalagang bagay po na hanggang kaya may mga bago tayong makakausap at naisip ko ang papel din ng aming opisina ngayon ay una kilalanin na hindi kami eksperto sa lahat ng usaping pampanitikan at ang papel namin kung hindi namin alam ito o kung hindi namin ito kabisado, maghanap kami ng mga taong kabisado, alam ito, naranasan ito para makikikwento sa inyo ang aming mga benepisyaryo. Wow, boto nyo ako sa election guys ha. Very campaigning yung Kaya eto, sasagawa natin ang PAN at ang iba pang mga gawain sa Literature for Social Development Program. Pinapakilala at kinikilala rin ang mga nagawa at napagtagumpayan ng Philippine Genre Fiction. Muling pinapakilala sa mga pinalimot na mga sariling pagod at kakapusan. Gayon din ang mga pinalimot ng ating fast-paced, market-driven, data-loaded na sistema. Nag-uulit-ulit tayo ng pagpapaalala, gaya ng prinsipyo ng mga kilalang iskolar sa panitikan at filosofiya. Bakit daw tayo ulit na ulit ng mga kwento, ng mga lecture, ng mga bahaginan? Una, lumilika una sa lahat dahil tinatato natin to bilang mahalaga kasi mahal natin ang pagsusulat at panitikan. kumakatha ng kumakatha dahil ang kasalukuyang daigdig ay maraming mali at sira, kaya kakatha at lilika hanggang sa ang inaasam na kaayusan ay makita. At with that, enjoy po natin ang talakayan, isang makabulang pagbawi ng alaala at paglikha sa lahat.
Maraming pong salamat, Dr. Gonzales. So muli, good afternoon. Okay, ako si Christine Lau, and again, I teach creative writing at the Department of English and Comparative Literature, College of Arts and Letters, UP Diliman. At this point, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the coordinator of the creative writing program, Dr. Sara Lumba. Please. Yes, and my colleagues from the department, Professor Ana Sanchez, co-editor of Mapping New Stars, which just won a World Fantasy Award. Congratulations, Ana. And Professor Paulo Sandicho of the English Language Studies program. We're very pleased to welcome you all to this forum organized with the Likhaan UP Institute of Creative Writing. Napakaraming salamat po, Dr. Gonzales and team. Now, as someone who works within the university, I often think about how institutions like ours are one way of producing literature through our classes, workshops, mentorship, and publication. But literary production extends far beyond the university. It also thrives in communities of readers and writers who share stories and sustain each other's work. Now, in recent years, we've seen a strong and growing interest in genre fiction, not only among readers, but within academia itself. Much of this energy has centered on speculative fiction, but we've also seen renewed interest in romance, crime, and mystery. For a long time, these communities and the writers who came from them were overlooked in traditional literary spaces. Yet, they've continued to flourish, forming vibrant ecosystems that connect readership and literary spaces. So this forum begins with curiosity. What role do genre communities play in shaping literary production in the Philippines? And what kind of conversations or tensions arise when their writers enter university workshops or publish in venues where social realism once dominated? So here's the flow for this afternoon. We'll begin with our senior panelists from Philippine Genre Stories who have helped build and sustain spaces for Filipino genre fiction. Then we'll hear from our emerging panel, 3 writers affiliated with contemporary genre-based communities within and outside the country. Their experiences will help us ask, what do these affiliations tell us about the shifting landscape of literary production? After the presentations, we'll have a conversation between the senior and emerging panels, followed by an open forum with you, the audience. Now, before we begin this conversation, we propose to enter it with an invitational spirit. The goal is to listen and understand rather than to push specific viewpoints. That way, we'll be better able to understand this wider literary ecosystem. Another note, our guest authors' books can be purchased from them directly. Nandiyan na po, naka-display. So lapit lang po tayo mamaya sa kanila. And also from the booths of UP Press and Anvil outside. We'll be ending with a short photo op and social shortly after 3 p.m. You may have your books signed then. You can purchase them directly, but we'll make sure everyone's out by 3:25. Okay? The dean will be using this room. So to start, okay, I would like to pose an opening provocation. What do genre communities teach us about literary value? Okay. So let's now meet our senior panelists from Philippine Genre Stories, a pioneering platform for Filipino speculative fiction. Kenneth Yu is an award-winning Filipino author whose short fiction has appeared in the Philippines, USA, Canada, Malaysia, and Taiwan. Praised by Ellen Datlow, Neil Gaiman, and 𝗍𝗶𝘃𝗁𝗏, He played a key role in the 2010s rise of Filipino genre fiction. A former judge at the Philippine National Book Awards and an advocate for youth literacy, he released his acclaimed debut collection, Mouths to Speak, Voices to Sing. Okay, do I have it here? Yes, I do. Okay. Published by Penguin Random House, followed by The Greatest Fight of Sunny Granada, published by Anvil. Okay. And is the founder and publisher of Philippine Genre Stories. Friends, let us welcome Kenneth Yu. Okay, he will be followed by 𝗤𝗍𝗻𝗁, okay, a writer and editor who helped advance Philippine speculative fiction. She began publishing in 2006 in the Philippine Free Press under 𝗩𝗲𝗂𝗁𝗍 and in Philippine Speculative Fiction anthologies edited by Dean and 𝗦ci𝗰𝗶𝗹 and the late Vincent Michael Simbulan. A steadfast advocate of the genre since 2005, she co-edited her 2024 bilingual edition, the first English Rinconada fiction book in Philippine literature, features translations by 𝗍𝗶𝘀𝗶 and 𝗪stian_escobedo. Her next book, The And That Was, is forthcoming from Rosarium Publishing in 2026. Mia is unable to join us today but sent a pre-recorded response. We will play her response after Kenneth Yu delivers his. So friends, again, please welcome both Kenneth Yu and 𝗤𝗍𝗻𝗁.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kenneth Yu. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having us. At this. Thank you, Professor Lau. I'd like to acknowledge, of course, thank you, Sir Vlad, Dr. Vlad, for everything. He was talking about age a while ago, and I'm greatly aware I'm the oldest in this room, so you'll get there. Everyone will get there. So yeah, let's get right to it, right? Can we please proceed to my slides? Thank you. So I set up Philippine Genre Stories for one reason. I was looking for our genre stories, genre fiction. So I can get into the context after I tell you a bit. I'm here to set the foundation and the context of what it was like in the mid-aughts and the 2010s. Completely different from what you guys are experiencing now. Next slide, please. So a little introduction of who I am. So my name is Kenneth Yu, father of two, old enough to be your fathers, I think, or even your grandfather for some of you young ones. I love dad and tito jokes, but I won't say it here because we're under time pressure. I'm a big tennis fan. So if I can use tennis as an analogy, which I shared with my co-panelists, if this was tennis, if itong pagsusulat at pagbabasa natin ay tennis, many of you have taken formal lessons. You got a trainer, you had sponsors who gave you rackets and shirts and shoes and shorts and what have you. I am the kid. Ako yung bata na kumuha ng lumang raketa sa likod, sa back shed, lumang balls, and I began hitting it against the wall. And then how did I join tournaments? Wildcards. Kumbaga, pinagbibigyan ng organizer. I am not very much an insider. Professor Lau said something about outside institutions. That's me. You're looking at exactly the kind of kung tennis nga, galing ako sa labas. Kung basketball to, sarili ako natuto maglaro ng basketball. Yes, I'm socially awkward. I'm an introvert. But I've learned how to be a little different. I'm now the head of integrated sports marketing and communications for Action Republic Corporation, which is the sports and marketing arm of 𝗩𝗶𝘀𝗀. I'd like to ask if I asked them to distribute. I hope they'll distribute. So I'm a writer, but first I'm a reading advocate. So next, please. Yes, with 𝗍𝗶𝘂𝗀𝗃, the father of speculative fiction in the Philippines, I've edited with UP Press, FFYA, fantasy, Filipino fiction for young adults, these three, fantasy, science fiction, and horror. And we are coming out with crime next year. It's going to be released next year, crime mystery. And we have an open call for submissions for utopia, dystopia. So please, if you've seen Stranger Things, I had 3 other friends. These are us 4. This is us. You just transpose it to a Filipino setting, that's us. So our imaginations were triggered. We ended up reading anything and everything. And we ended up retelling the Greek myths in our own words. That's the first time I got published as a grade school student. It sucks. And it was really terrible. So before we delve into the genre proper, I'd just like to say I'm not touching romance. That belongs to Mina, a good friend of ours, a good friend of ours, and she's doing a great job with her friends there. So we'll touch on the other genres that Tin has mentioned. Next slide, please. So that's the 𝗪𝗁𝗃 book on the upper left. And I learned to write on a Royal typewriter from the 80s. I lost it. I completely, my father gave it away without letting me know. But of course, he replaced it with another one, but I missed it. So during the pandemic, I found one for sale and I bought it because I didn't want to lose it. So I still have that model Royal typewriter. It even has a peso sign. Now, take a look at the authors that I grew up on. I don't know if you notice anything. I'll give a few seconds. Yep, that's right. They're all white. There are a few women. There are some black. Delaney, maybe. Butler. Yeah, but very few. Very few. There's one Asian. I think 𝗪𝗶𝘀𝗶 is mentioned, right? But yeah, they're all Western. So I was wondering where's us? Where were the ones where I lived, where I grew up? Where are they? So next slide, please. So I decided to look for it. That's it. And how did I look for it? Like I said, I'm from the outside, right? I'm not formally trained with tennis, to use the metaphor, to pursue the metaphor. Against my parents' wishes, I took up a creative writing class in my senior year as an elective. Of course, they wanted me to take up further business classes, which was my original course. Anything to help my business, whether it's communications, business writing, whatever. I decided to take up a creative writing class under a certain professor. And when I submitted the first draft of my short story for that class, I submitted a mystery and suspense story, a la Agatha Christie. And I was told promptly, everyone else got a mark except me. I didn't get a mark and appearance. Next slide, please. Fast forward about a decade after I graduated, strangely enough, I did well in that class when I shifted to social realism. I couldn't believe it, but I did well. But fast forward some 10 years, and my first business, not my first, my third, sorry. I became an entrepreneur and I set up a printing press. I lost it to 𝗍𝗲𝗍𝗀, but before I did, I set up Philippine Genre Stories as a printed digest, pre-internet. So we distributed it, the bookstores and everything. We were able to release 7 issues over 5 years. And what you're seeing are the issues. They're out there. I didn't bring them here because I think I have the last issues on my shelf at home. So they're kind of precious to me for sentimental reasons. And this is when I got my second experience of the divide. Just much like today, we have conventions, right? We have chances to display our work, like in lit fests or what have you. So I was at one, and I had it displayed, and another prominent person from the academe walked by and looked at it and simply said, genre, what's genre? With speculative, this is just adding confusion to the market, to confusion to everybody. You're just muddling up the definitions. And then sabay talikod, lakad paalis, not even waiting for me to say anything. So yeah, so anyway, so I was very aware suddenly of this divide, that there was this hostility, and it rattles me up to now. It irks me up to now. I will balance that now because I'm only setting the context. We're not going to go to that. This is just setting the context. I'll balance it by saying I did get support, and I'll mention him, Professor 𝗪𝗪𝗪. I sent some of my issues to him, and he wrote positively about it in his penman column on the newspaper about PGS. So I'm balancing it by saying there was support. So I'm just saying I don't want to say negatives. I don't want to focus on the negatives. There was support, and I'm grateful for that. Next slide, please. I've been blessed. So seek and ye shall find. I was looking for our writers, right? Here in this country. I'm tired. I was tired of the Western influence. And these are just some of those I found. I've been blessed to read their stories. Vince is there. Rest in peace, Vince. He passed away a few years ago. But I've been blessed to have met these people. Next slide, please. And more. These are just a sample. I couldn't find all their pictures. As you can see, Mia and Tin Lau are there. But these are just some of those that I've met, and I've been very honored and grateful to have read fellow Filipinos' stories, genre stories. So next slide, please. This was our market then. This was our market. It's very limited, pre-internet, okay? The free press is gone, as I'm sure you know. Graphic is still around, it's evolving. Panorama, I don't think publishes anymore, or Star Week short stories. I'm not sure, I don't follow it anymore. Of course, Dean's PSF is there. A Time for Dragons was an anthology set up by Vin. Expeditions was that contest held with Fully Booked years ago. I will not ignore True Philippine Ghost Stories. Some may question the quality, but that thing was sold like anything, and it shows that there was readership on the so-called, masa, but I don't like to judge. But it just goes to show there's interest in speculative fiction there. Not in this Story Philippines, which was the first market to offer a really high amount. Back then, they were giving like 7,000 pesos per story, but I couldn't find a cover. So for some reason, it did not survive into digital. So next slide, please. And now, onto the communities. When the internet came out, this was the communities that developed under genre through blogs. These are just the blogs of just a sampling of some of the blogs where we read each other on our various thoughts, even our lives, but mostly thoughts about writing. So these are just some. You can see there were like, I read at that time maybe 15, 16 blogs at the time, and I really enjoyed it. I know, for example, 𝗍𝗂𝘗𝗀 has said that I wish he misses this time when we could read each other's blogs. But of course, things evolved, social media came out, and things changed. If you'll notice, the background of this slide is a playground, which I've shared with my panelists. This is how I look at it. This is my analogy. Writing back then in the aughts and the 2010s was like a playground, okay? And there were these cool group of kids who played their games in one corner of this playground, right? It was a big lot, and they were playing it in that playground, and it was fun. And then some of us younger kids went to these older kids and said, hey, can we join? Oops. Hey, can we join? Can we join your game? And then they said, sure. So we start playing and following the rules. Then we said, what if we modify the rules a bit? What if we play these games a little bit, just adjusting a little bit? And as I mentioned, we were told, for the most part, no, let's stick to our rules. Our rules work. This is the way we play our game, and that's it. Okay, fine, let's play. However, some of us, pasaway, the lot was big. I mean, there was a lot of land. We expanded a little, took up space just outside that circle. And that's where we played the same game with modified rules, so to speak. Again, I'm using an analogy. And it worked. Suddenly, there's this bigger place where the playground has grown. And then now, I'm happy to say, now that I'm old, some other younger kids have come by. Thank you, especially pointing to these three here to my left. And they said, hey, we've got some ideas. Can we play your game? Sure. Can we modify it a bit? And our answer now, as the older guys, or the ones with Rayuma, yeah, sure. Can you teach us? We've got a lot to learn. And suddenly the playground now has expanded another degree. So that's I don't know if it's a perfect analogy or an imperfect one, but that's how I see it. And I shared it with my panelists. Next slide, please. So I made PGS because I wanted to read genre works by Filipinos. It has expanded. I now want to read genre works by non-Western, non-white, not everything. I want to go beyond. So as you can see, I've written other things. I've gone to Filipino. Chinese is easy for me because I have a Chinese heritage. It was easy for me to find. But Japanese, Korean, Thai, Aborigines from Australia, South Africa, Zimbabwe, those things, those were, thanks to the internet, it's easier to find. And I've expanded to that. And PGS has evolved into PhilippineGenreStories.com, where Tijam is my editor right now. I'm still acting as publisher. Professor Lau will be my publisher for 6 months next year. So will be my editor for 6 months next year. So I'm grateful for them. We're expanding it little by little. And I'm still able to read new work by younger people, even up to today, by Filipinos. So next slide, please. So these are just the latest. This is the latest screenshots from Philippine Genre Stories. Very simple. I'm sorry, I'm no techie or anything. But if you want to read genre fiction by Pinoys, past and present, it's here. Next slide, please. Okay, from a reader's perspective, remember, I'm a reader first. I've always said a story is a story is a story. Categories be damned, but they're useful. Categories are useful. Booksellers have to find a way to categorize on their websites, in their stores. Publishers have to find a way to categorize for their websites, right? And how to sell. Libraries have to do it. Heck, even in your personal library, you might have your own system of categorizing how. So, yes, labels are important, but in the end, the story is a story is a story. If it's captivating enough, whether it's a social realist, a crime mystery, if it talks to you and speaks to you and is relatable to you, that's what makes it important. That it's the story that matters. That's for me. I'm very heartened by today's reading writing communities represented by the three beside me. And by other individuals. There are many. They are producing and working together for the stories they are passionate about, and I see some of myself in them, except they have more energy. So, if anything, I ask as an old guy, it's that they be open and supportive of the next generations and not crush any of the ideas, but expand the playground even more. And maybe that's how we'll get even more readers. Next slide, please. And lastly, I'm preaching to the choir. Of course, please continue reading fiction or nonfiction in any language by any writer from anywhere in the world, in any genre, on any topic, both inside and outside your comfort zones. Thank you. That is my talk for today.
Thank you very much, Yu, okay, Kenneth Yu. Uh, Kenneth Yu and our department had a partnership a few years ago. This is the outcome of that. Some of my students, one of them is here, John Rayos, was published by Philippine Genre Fiction. So what has happened was Kenneth Yu, we approached Kenneth Yu for an opportunity to expand the work that our class had done and make the stories ready for publication in this venue. And that has allowed us to come out with this book. So thank you very much for that, Kenneth. Okay, we will now move on to Mia Tiham's recorded message.
Magandang hapon po sa 𝗍𝗶𝘶. Good afternoon to all, and thanks for having us this afternoon, and thanks for having me. I'm not there physically, but I'm very much grateful for the virtual options, and so I get to share the afternoon with you all the way in Naga, in Camarines Sur, in Bicol. And so we are here today, Q and I. We are all invited today because we want to share with you our journey in writing and producing the genre. And so the first provocation provided by the moderator, Tin Lau, is the question, what do genre communities teach us about literary value? And so highlighted are two terms there, genre communities and literary value. And so I will be speaking of my experience, shared experience, at least with the community that I grew up with as a writer in the past 20 years. And so to answer this question, I'm going to reference two books. And so you're looking at the cover of the first volume of the Philippine Speculative Fiction Anthologies, which was edited by Dean Francis Alfar. And the other one is the newly released textbook. It's a source book from UP Press entitled Mapping New Stars. It's a source book on Philippine speculative fiction released this year and which was recently awarded in the World Fantasy Awards for the professional category. And so why am I showing you these two books? And so in between these two books is 20 years. So when you think about it, 20 years is technically the definition for a generation already. And so when this book, the Philippine Speculative Fiction Volume 1 was launched in 2005, Dean Alfar, the editor and one of the prime proponents of what would become as Philippine speculative fiction, said that to find the fantastic, we must create the fantastic. And this was the condition 20 years ago. And so in the book, as an editor, Gabby Lee was saying just this November 3, 2025, that this source book is for the communities of writers who are looking for ways to articulate a genre, a tradition, a practice of writing that was never really made to feel welcome at the table. And so in between those 20 years, through those 20 years, that is a very telling insight. And I'm glad that she articulated it. Because when we were starting in 2005, the dominant storytelling mode was social realist mode. And in Philippine publications, you would rarely see published stories, and I'm going to stick to short stories, okay, in English. Published short stories in English in the typical publications that we have. And so when we talk about the genre communities, right? So the role of the genre community in being able to produce what is Philippine speculative fiction. And so these genre communities, and we're talking about different communities at that time, different groups. We're all readers of genre, right? What would be sci-fi, fantasy, horror, anything under what we would term as genre. Most, if not all of us, were readers of genre. And so we made up this community of readers of genre. And what galvanized us to write the genre is because we wanted to see in Philippine publications the stories that we were reading. And through time, that it was what became Philippine speculative fiction. And that was an umbrella term for all of the genres that you can put there. That's Philippine speculative fiction. And over time, that is what generated what we call the literary value. And when we say the literary value, we're referring to its meaningfulness primarily to readers. And on a higher level, let's say on an academic level, you're talking about the contribution of what is produced in Philippine speculative fiction in what is Philippine literature, and specifically in English. All right. So that primarily stem from these genre communities. And about these communities, you, Kenneth Yu, the publisher of Philippine Genre Stories, will expound on that more. Okay. And so producing the stories, we were writing. And so what were produced through the years, what was primarily produced was the annual Philippine Speculative Fiction anthologies being edited by Dean Alfar, Dean and Nikki Alfar, Dean Nikki, and then Vincent Michael-Simbulan. What you're looking at are the first 6 volumes, and these were not the physical books. These were the ebook versions already. But this was going on every year. And when we talk about communities, it's about the genre community, the genre readers, and the genre writers. It's about having a platform where we would send the stories that we were making. And dominantly at that time, our go-to platform was the Philippine Speculative Fiction Anthologies. That's every year. And so after 5 years, so the first volume was produced in 2005. And in those 5 years, for 2005 to 2010, the best, or at least significant, or at least noteworthy, were collated by Dean and Nikki Alfar into the Best of Speculative Fiction 2005-2010, which was published by UP Press. And it came out by February 2013, 3 years later, because anthologizing, of course, takes time. So there's this. You've got anthologies that were producing and providing a platform for all of the writers who were writing in genre at that time. And there were, of course, other anthologies produced. So what you're looking at right now is first the Philippine Speculative Fiction Sampler, which was released in 2008. This is still available online. You just need to Google it. Charles Tan, my co-editor, has made it available all throughout this time, so you can Google it. It's there. And it collated, actually selected from published stories from 2005 to, I think, 2008. So 3 years, only in 3 years, we collated it. And the intention, as Charles Tan would say in his introduction, was to make it available to more people. That's why it's online. Another one was the project on the Best of Philippine Speculative Fiction in 2009. This was purely for 2009. So see, 2005 to 2008 was covered. And then Charles Tan, again, selected through what was produced in 2009, and he released that in an anthology. Another anthology, of course, was the Philippine Graphic Fiction Awards, which was the go-to. If awards would be a motivation, it was the award that many of the speculative fiction writers applied for. And the winning pieces were made into an anthology. This was produced by Fully Booked. Then you have also a Filipino-Chinese fiction anthology, again edited by Charles Tan. And then we had A Time of Dragons, Four Dragons, which was published by Anvil, edited by Vincent Michael-Simbulan, the late Vincent Michael-Simbulan. And this is about dragons. All right. Other anthologies produced, again, we're just spanning from 2005 to, let's say, 2020, thereabouts, 15 years, were these anthologies. So you've got SciComm. Most of the time when we talk about Philippine speculative fiction, especially in the past 20 years, in the latter years, people have forgotten that first and foremost, there was SciComm. And SciComm was one of the first producers, publishers of what is speculative fiction. And then so we have these Pinoy Amazing Stories edited by Carl Joe Javier. We also have Alternative Alamat, edited by Paulo Chequiamco. So these are the retelling of myths and legends. And then we have 3 anthologies from what was originally Estranjero Press. It was, again, digital. And then it transitioned to being on print, published by UP Press. So one is on secondary world, the other one is on horror, and the third one is on science fiction. All right. So these are some of the anthologies. Again, producing stories in speculative fiction that were made into anthologies. And furthermore, there were additional specifically for young adults. So you were looking here at three genres. You've got fantasy, horror, and science fiction, again co-edited by Kenneth Yu and 𝗩𝗏𝗏𝗏, published again by UP Press. And then we have this also other anthology, All That Darkness Allows, 13 Tales of Horror and Dread. And so these are just some, dominantly I think, but some. If I missed, my bad, forgive me. But these are some of the anthologies I have personally tracked since 2005. And then if we go about solo books, right? So you're looking at samples of solo books, short fiction in speculative fiction anthology produced by male authors from 2005 to, let's say, around, again, 2020. And so you're looking at here around 10. You've got 10 short story collections, and 3 of them come from the ever prolific Dean, right? 2 of them, Jude Ortega, and then The Seekers of Spirits and Tales from Ticao of Tito 𝗍𝗏𝗍𝗏𝗏, are actually of the regions, right? And then, of course, surprisingly and amazingly, more short story collections in the speculative fiction were actually produced by female authors. And you're looking at 14 of them from 2005 to 2020, 2021, right? I think about 3 of these were published abroad, right? And the rest were published, the publishers were abroad, and the rest are, of course, local publishers. And so again, let's go back to these all come from the community of genre readers that are genre writers that contributed to what is Philippine speculative fiction and what are the books now available in Philippine speculative fiction for everybody. And so if you're talking about, okay, how far? Again, we were coming from a space where genre writing was not accepted. And this was starting, let's say, at least from my awareness, in 2005. And then quite a ways in the journey, given what was produced by the communities, what was contributed to what is Philippine literature, so much so that by 2019, in the National Book Awards, you have 3 out of the 5 finalists that are actually speculative fiction. And so when we talk about the significance of things and literary value and making space for what we wanted to read, and what many readers wanted to read, and producing that, now it has reached the level of National Book Awards. And so we're talking about the genre community. So it's about reading, it's about writing, but still there's a question of accessibility for readers, accessibility for writers, right? Where's that venue? And this is where Philippine Genre Stories come in, because Philippine Genre Stories is digital, of course, and it's free. It's free, meaning it's free for everyone to read. You don't have to buy it. You don't have to buy a book. And at least in the past 3.5 years, it has provided a consistent platform for anybody. And now we're talking about the new generation, the younger writers who are still looking for homes and for that space for our kind of stories. And so much so that in 2023 to 2025, since Philippine Genre Stories has been operating, meaning publishing a story, a featured story, and a featured Q&A of the author of this chosen story for the month, we have about 25% of the published authors are actually first-time authors. First-time authors, meaning that this is the first time that they are publishing a short story. And so not all of them are creative writing majors, of course. Many of them come from different fields. And of course, the fact that one of our most favorites is our youngest published author, who is 𝗍𝗏𝗍 Esenting, who's only 9 years old. And publishing 𝗍𝗏𝗍 has actually reminded many of us about the joys of being published for the first time or writing for the first time. And so this is Philippine Genre Stories experience already. Again, it's providing, the community provides a platform for the new writers, a new kind of writing, new kind of imaginings. Also, a significant contribution is an opening is the fact that Philippine Genre Stories has opened its doors for bilingual publications, meaning a story written in English, but at the same time it has a native language version, whether it was the native language first that was used, translated into English, or vice versa. But the fact that for a country, an archipelago that has so many languages, we have yet to see really published speculative fiction stories in our native languages. And so an example of this is The Woman Who Loves. This is Ang Babayi Nga Nagluluno. It was written in Waray by Efmer A. Agustin. Again, this is available online for everybody to see. And at the same time, it's an avenue for us to appreciate and maybe learn the other native languages through translation. And another thing, so we're moving towards, so again, the movement is moving away from being Manila-centric, away from just being English-centric when it comes to short stories in Philippine speculative fiction. And so we are looking at, and the most recent experience is the 12th Sering Sing National Writers Workshop, which is being run on its in its 12th year, of course, in Bicol. This is being run by Parasurat Bicol Nun. And in the 12th cycle, we have the fellows who, of course, were part of the workshop. And one of the most amazing things is that one of the projects submitted is a novel or a novella, and it's in science fiction, and it's written in Rinconada. And in Rinconada is not yet one of the languages that is frequently published. So if ever, so imagine that this is science fiction and this is written in Rinconada. That of course the project has yet to be finished, but the fact that if it does, then it will be the first novel or novella written in Rinconada, and the fact that it will be science fiction. And so let's go back to this little, journey that began in Philippine Speculative Fiction Volume 1 in 2005. And 20 years later, you got a textbook, a source book that provides initial guidance for readers, writers, teachers on Philippine speculative fiction. And what I am personally hoping for is that we move towards the regional speculative fiction written in the native languages. That would be something to see. And so thank you again for your time this afternoon. If you have questions, go ask Tin Lao or Kenneth Yu. Or if you have specifically questions for me, I would suggest that you write at philippinegenrestories@gmail.com. Thank you so much for your time for this afternoon. Thank you very much. 𝗩𝗶𝘀𝗶𝘁 po. 𝗩𝗶𝘀𝗶𝘁 po sa inyo, kabos. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the talk this afternoon.
Okay, thank you very much, Mia. That was wonderful, no? Gising pa ba kayo? Oh, yeah. Yeah, gising pa tayo, no? Amazingly, the audience is alive and very much interested. This was 20 years worth of books and stories, no, from a community. So, I'm glad that the interest, no, pag medyo inaantok kayo, remember there is Rebisco over there. Yan. Mamaya po, pagtapos ng event, there's time to socialize and take some. From these beginnings, that 20-year summary, and as well as the context that Kenneth Yu shared with us, we would like to now turn to the writers who are working within newer communities. Our next panel features 3 emerging writers whose work and affiliation show how these ecosystems continue to evolve. Our first emerging panelist is Michellan Sarile-Alagao. She is an editor, educator, and writer whose work spans many genres, from noir, poetry, okay, in her verse novella Black, to children's books on rights and mental health. The Sad Cat is my favorite. Yeah. She moderates Philippine Speculative Fiction Society, serves on the board of the Christian Writers Fellowship, and is a member of the Right Ones, which is represented here as well today. A fellow of the 𝗍𝗂𝘃 and Diliman University National Writers Workshops, she also attended the International Roots, Wounds, and Words Retreat for BIPOC or BIPOC writers. So French, 𝗏𝗏𝗃. Okay? Following Mitch will be Kadi Serafica, who is a platero, but also a Filipino author of fantasy and horror inspired by local mythology and folklore. Okay. His debut novel, The Awakening, Volume 1 of Alamat, is very popular. The first in a planned 8-volume series exploring a modern world where myths and folklore are real, was a National Book Award finalist. He was also a fellow of the 63rd Diliman University National Writers Workshop, and his books, as are Mitch's books, they're available here for sale. So please just approach the authors afterwards. Friends, KD. No? And finally, but certainly not the least, no, Matthew Jacob F. Ramos, who writes speculative fiction about woven computers, rocketry, and revolution. His work has earned recognition from the Palanca and 𝗍𝗃 Literary Arts Awards and has appeared in Philippine Genre Stories, the Philippine Graphic, and 𝗏𝗏 Writing in the Philippines. A creative writing graduate of Ateneo de Manila University, he now pursues graduate studies on the relationship between islands and technology. He is also responsible for designing the wonderful, wonderful poster for this event, Friends Jacob Ramos. So I'd like to invite Mish to start off the discussion.
Ay, magandang hapon po. Teka, nahihirapan ako mag...
Mish, would you like to just...
Ay, oo nga, no?
Yeah, why don't you just...
Si- Salamat. Mga na-realize ko, parang ang hirap doon, nakaganon ako. Ayan. Okay. So, hello, everyone. I'll be talking, so just coming from what Sir Q and Mamia were talking about, really just giving the institutional history of genre communities, genre writing. So I'm gonna like sort of continue from that point naman. So kung ano na nangyayari. But first, I'll give a bit of context from of where I'm coming from, no. Antayin ko lang yung slides. Ayun. So yun. So I'll be talking about genre reading and writing, local communities, and also yung publishing ecosystems, because it really played a part, I think, in cementing and developing yung mga genre communities as well. When technology really ties into that. Next slide, please. Ayan. So 20 years ago, I don't know what we were called, but nowadays, yung mga katulad ko na writers, tawag sa kanila yung mga multi-genre hybrid writer. Wow, multi-genre? Mga haba, long words. But basically, it just means writers who have one foot in the traditional publishing industry system and in the independent. So I think before kasi parang it's either you do traditional publishing, so yung ka lang, or you do independent publishing. Ngayon, the lines are blurred eh. So if you look on that side, all of my children's books are all traditionally published. But if you look on this side, all of my other, I'd say, less commercially viable works are independently published. So you have yung verse novella, mga poetry chapbooks, collection ng flash fiction, so ganun. So, yun yung naging introduction ko into publishing. I just went for it and then yun, tuloy-tuloy na. I started 2016 and in 2016, medyo okay na yung tingin sa independent publishing eh. Before that, I remember around mga 2005, hindi siya kasing accepted, I would say, among the people who produce literature in the country, at saka hindi rin siya ganun ka-accessible. Nowadays, it's easy. If you want to publish something, you don't have any gatekeepers. You can just publish whatever you want. Whether or not what you publish has quality is subjective, diba? So we're not going to talk about that. We're just talking about the ecosystem itself. So yun. Next slide po. Yun. So yung genre reading history ko, you know, this parang yung kay Sir Q din, ano yung kulang dyan? Diba? Wala masyadong local. So, nung when I was growing up, this was like the mid-late 80s to early 90s. Ito lang kasi yun available, honestly. Like yun, I don't know if any of you still remember the Bulgaria, the David Eddings. You do? Yeah. Lahat ng national bookstore may ganyan. Pero, wala akong nakikitang local na mga fantasy books at that time. And then yun. So, but this is like a history of my genre reading. So, my introduction to mystery, detective, si Nancy Drew. My introduction to science fiction were the books of Pamela F. Service, which was like young adult science fiction. Horror, si Stephen King. And then for comics, syempre manga. So kami yung generation ng mga otaku. Ayan. So, may bagong reboot na nga, yun man, naabutan ko, bumalik na naman eh. So diba, yan. And then also, for also Asian, I don't know if anyone is familiar with Return of the Condor Heroes, Legend of the Condor Heroes. Yes, yan. So yan yung introduction ko to comics and 𝗏𝗂𝘁𝗃. Ganyan. And then, yung mga copies ng tatay ko ng heavy metal na tinatago-tago niya, kasi medyo not suitable for children. Ninanakaw ko, binabasa ko. So, sabi ko, ay ano to, daming boobs. Anyway, pero magaganda naman yung kwento. Tsaka mga speculative fiction, science fiction, there are actually pretty good stories there. Yan. Later on ko na lang na-realize na, okay, meron din tayo nun locally. And I think yung mga unang mga local literature na na-encounter ko was actually comics. Like Pugad Baboy, si Pupong. Sino nakakilala kay Pupong dito? Eh, Sir Q lang talaga eh. Ayun, okay, thank you. So yeah, yun. Pero those were like, yun lang yung accessible talaga eh. So it wasn't for want of, like, hindi sa, wala talaga kami makuha at the time. Kung meron, then, I think my generation, we would have embraced it talaga more. Pero yun nga accessibility. Next slide, please. So yun. So finally, nung tumanda-tanda na ako, I was a genre reader. That's when I started wanting to find communities that, would have the same interests as I have, the same reading interest, the same writing interest. So kung saan ako pumunta, ayan na yung search for community ko. Kaya sumama ako sa mga workshop, ganyan, sali-sali ako. Tapos yung mga writing group, online, offline, in person, digital, yan. Masali ako sa masali ako sa kung ano-anong group. Introvert ako pero mahilig ako sumali sa group. Ewan ko ba. Pero tahimik lang ako. Kasi nakaupo lang ako doon. Tapos nakikinig lang ako. So, yun. And thankfully, I found a number of local genre communities that were very welcoming and that I've been connected to. Next slide, please. So one of those, which I'll focus on here, is the Christian Writers Fellowship. So the Christian Writers Fellowship has actually been around since 1986. I don't know if hindi siya, I suppose, as well known as other writers groups, but it has been around for quite some time. I think it started as an offshoot of a 3-day writers workshop by 𝗍𝗍𝗃, which is the Institute for Studies in Asian Church and Culture, headed by Dr. 𝗩𝗶𝗀𝗃. And it continues until now, to this day. So, yun, I'm part of the board. And what we do is we organize a lot of seminars and workshops for Christian writers to really equip them, not just in expanding the worldview and having solid theology and hermeneutical stances, but also in the craft of writing. So here are some examples. And I'm including this because I believe that faith-based literature is also a type of genre literature, diba? For example, fantasy, Tolkien, C.S. Lewis. I mean, we know them as fantasy, but they're Christian allegory. May mga iba-ibang mga Christian genres din. Like, for example, mga Christian romance, yung mga kay Francine Rivers, sino ba yun? 𝗍𝗶𝘃𝗀𝗏 something, ganon. There's also Christian horror, which is like Frank Peretti, Jerry Jenkins, etc. So, marami rin siyang genre as well. So, but those are all foreign. What we're trying to do here in the Philippines is raise up like different writers who would also do genre writing as well. Hindi lang yung mga non-fiction. Next, please. Yan. So, here are some of the activities that we've been doing for the community. So, as you can see, ayan. So, we actually invited Miss Mina for writing the romance novel. That was back in 2015. And then yun, mga letter writing. We also have yung mga zine, which we produce, and then we ask different local Christian writers to contribute to it. Tapos, yun, we distribute, we sell it for fundraising as well. And then we have our seminars. So hopefully we really are continuing to do this in the years to come, really just equipping and making sure that there's more locally produced Christian literature. Next slide, please. Yan. Another group that recently I've been part of, mga 1 year lang, kasi bago pa lang ito is the Philippine Speculative Fiction Society. Haba, diba? So, Pinoy Spec Fic na lang. Yun. So, PSF for short. Yan. Kasama ko si Kadi dyan. So, ang story nito, yung PSF, so last year, in Metro Manila, diba? So parang, paano yun? Lahat na lang nandun. So we wanted something, Rain wanted something that was more accessible, digital. And then she reached out to me, to Kadi, to TJ 𝗍𝗻𝗃 and said, what if we make a group on Facebook for people who are readers and writers of spec fic? Tapos, yun lang. So we just make that group, we moderate it, invite people, and then we can exchange ideas and do, all sorts of things, talk about specfic because we love specfic. So sabi namin, okay, game. So una ganun lang talaga. But then, we were like, what if we expand and do more? And so, ayun na. So far in the year that we've been active, we've organized meetups, we've had field trips, and we also do online webinars. Also, yung plans namin include more collaborations, hopefully with different communities as well, different genre communities, and also reading groups, and fingers crossed, a possible anthology. Next slide, please. Yan. So here are some of the things that we've done so far as a community. So yun, so yung example nung webinar, ayan, may webinar kami yung guest, this was like for horror, si 𝗍𝗶𝗶𝗃. And then, yun is, ayan yun sa baba, yun venue, facility, yan. Kasama ko si Kadi, yan. So, nasa ano rin yan sa PSF. Tapos, after that, nag-talk sila. Tapos, yung talk nila focused on atom punk. So they talked about atom punk and how nuclear power has been portrayed in pop culture, like in different movies. And there was even a speaker who talked about the portrayal of scientists in local cinema. So yun, so it was good kasi it helped the community, us, and there were all writers, readers of specfic. It helped us really get to know more about our own local culture. Tsaka paano natin ini-interpret yon, yung mga elements of science fiction and things like that. And yun isa, ayan, nag-field trip, nag-meet up or activity sa National Museum. And then after that, there was a talk with 𝗍𝗶𝗃𝗁. And yung topic naman doon is alternate history. So like if you want to write alternate history, diba? Tapos nung recent MIBF, we asked the community, sino dito yung nagsusulat, who already has books, but doesn't really like have a venue to sell it. What we can do is we can share a space. Tapos kami ni Rain and others, nagtulungan lang kami. We weren't paid or anything. We just volunteered. So we're like, we're gonna sell our books. So nandun kami, nag-shifting kami. Tapos nagbenta ng mga libro, and it was nice kasi we got to meet more readers. We got to connect with other writers. I think that's the important thing din to take note of dito sa mga reading and writing communities na binabasa namin ang isa't isa. Familiar kami sa works ng isa't isa. 'Di ba? Hindi lang yung pupunta ka doon and then promote ka, pero hindi mo naman alam, di mo kilala yung mga kasama mo. It's a capitalistic thing. What we're trying to do is really build communities. Yeah, next slide po. Yan. These are just some of my reflections, and I guess we can talk a bit more about it with, the other things later. But these are what I feel we need more of in our local genre communities. Next slide. So yun, I think we really need more accessible and inclusive writing spaces for people who want to explore genre reading and writing. When I talk about more accessible and inclusive writing spaces, like spaces for people who are not part of Metro Manila, who like, for example, Kadi is based in Isabela. So, pumunta pa siya dito, di ba? Para doon. As I mentioned, our founder nung PSF, Rain, is in Baguio. But she wasn't able to join us now. Kami naman ni TJ, we're based in Metro Manila. So, it's we have a lot of writers in different parts of the Philippines, and we really want to connect them. So we're hoping, yun nga, accessibility is better. Thanks to the internet, thanks to social media, nangyayari yun. So hopefully, tuloy-tuloy pa yun. And also more inclusive writing spaces. Kasi my day job is working at a learning community for non-traditional learners. So when I say non-traditional learners, these are kids, teens, ages 12 to 22 who are homeschooled or who are unschooled, who are basically not in the traditional school system. And this could be for different reasons. This could be because ayaw ng pamilya nila, family culture, or it could be because they have learning difficulties. They could be on the spectrum, or they have mental health issues, or they have physical issues that keep them from going to a traditional school, like mga PWD sila ng mga teens. And I hope that there are more writing spaces for teens like that. Na mas accessible, 'di ba? Ang ganda sana nun. Kasi sila yun talagang they embrace genre fiction. You know, because they can see themselves in a lot of characters, in genre characters. Okay, next slide. Sorry, na-allergy ako, guys. So, I also hope that we have more spaces and opportunities for collaboration. I notice, sorry na lang ha, sabihin ko to, I notice ang cliquish natin, 'di ba? Parang, oh, ito, sila lang. Ito, sila, ito sinusulat ko, ganyan lang. Sana mas collaborative tayo. Like for example, natutuwa ako, may partnership yung romance class at saka yung comic-et. So that's like romance readers and writers and comics people. Diba? It's very collaborative. I want to see more of that sana. I want to, like, for example, I love speculative fiction. I also love poetry. It would be awesome, I think, if there was a overlap of more speculative poetry, more writers, more readers to produce that. Mas maganda pagka ganon, di ba? It so much comes, so much good and so much value comes out of collaboration, cross-genre collaboration, collaborations with writers and readers, and all of those things, di ba? Nakakatuwa siya, tsaka nakakaano siya. It makes everything richer. So next slide, I think it is the last slide. Yan. And yun, and so, you know, because of that, then we'd be able to produce more. There'd be more of a variety of things, hybrid novels, parang mas maging experimental tayo, di ba? Wag lang yung parang, oh, ito lang ako, okay, poetry lang, fiction lang. This is already 2025 na, guys, you know, and we can do whatever we want. Bahala na kayo dyan. So, you know, I don't know if ever you've like, as Sir Q has mentioned, yun parang, since you're in university, I don't know if you've come across people who have told you, no, don't do that, do this. Ako, I believe it's, no, just do whatever you want, write whatever you want, diba? Who's stopping you? What's stopping you? If you wanna do some, gusto ko ganito, tapos sabihin nila, wag yan. Bakit? Gusto ko gawin ano ka ba? So, just do, you know, bahala na. That's basically what I wanna see more is more freedom, more variety. And that's, I think, the value of genre communities, is in bringing more variety, in bringing a multiplicity of viewpoints, of ways to attack literature, and even of defining, you know, literary value and all of those things. Kasi hindi naman galing sa ivory tower yun, di ba? Hindi naman sila yung nag-define ng kung ano yung literary, di ba? Tayo, ang communities ang nagde-define nun. So, yun. And that's it. That's my talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll proceed with KD. Okay.
Hello. So anyway, this particular one is about how retelling myths is a way to converse with our ancestors. So, can you? So anyway, my name is Kadi Serafica. I'm a platero. That's a Tagalog or Old Tagalog, maybe Spanish word for goldsmith. So I grew up with my uncles and my father, you know, smelting gold dust and trinkets into jewelries. I think that's the reason why fantasy, especially spec fic, is I imbibed it because back then, as I was a kid, I would watch, you know, these things turn into something else, like everything is possible. So anyway, I have produced 2 books out of the planned 8. So anyway, the series I've written is called Alamat, A History of the Awakened. So in this story, awakened is the modern term they would use for people with power. So these powers are basically a way to categorize, you know, abilities that we see people from different folklores and mythologies boiled down into 4. So there's people who could, like in every, napansin ko kasi, when I was reading stories that lahat ng stories, mga folklores, mythology, there are 4 types of characters. The first one is the hero. So he's usually is very strong, very hard to kill, very fast, physical type. And then there's also someone who is a wise person, the hermit, or the someone who is wise and gives counsel to the hero. And then there's the king, who would give the quest, or maybe is the quest, the princess that's about to be saved. And then of course the monsters. So those are the categories or the awakens. So boiled down into character types. Anyway, can you go back? I started writing alamat because I noticed, katulad nila Sir Q, I grew up reading mga Western books. Back in elementary, I think grade 6, nagkaroon ng plague sa amin ng Edith Hamilton mythology book. I came from like a public school, so we don't really have access to book. And then someone, may mayaman yata siyang ninang or something, niregaluhan siya ng Edith Hamilton book, yung paperback. And then we were so engrossed with it na it passed down from people to people hanggang sa kaming lahat naglalaro na kami nung mga trivia kung ano yung alam mo sa mythology ni Edith Hamilton. And then I realized back then na nasan yung Filipino mythology? Bakit wala tayong ganon? I didn't know back then kasi hindi ko pa na-connect. Siyempre, isip bata. Na every now and then, a salesman would come, talk to our teacher, ask permission, and then he would sell us these small books na about bakit maraming mata yung pinya, paano nakuha ng Maria Cristina Falls yung name niya, things like that. I didn't know that was folklore. I just thought they're made-up stories by those people who sell them to us. So anyway, as I grew up, I realized na wala tayong mythology stories written. So I started writing them. And I modernized them, kaya ko ginawa yung Awakened system. And the plan is to write like a universe wherein you can connect all mythologies, not just Filipino ones. So that's what I've been attempting to do. So medyo grand siya. Yeah, it's very ambitious. Pero I think it's a worthwhile thing to do kasi we don't need to stoop down to doing something simple when we can attempt to do something great. So yun lang. Whether I would achieve it or not, I don't know. But anyway, next po. So isa sa mga issues na na-encounter ko when people started realizing I'm going to start talking about myth, they would stop me and ask about what's about cultural appropriation and isn't it disrespectful of our culture? So and then there's also people telling me you're corrupting the stories, the original stories. And also, it goes against the preserving the original, because if you keep on putting up these other stories, you're muddying the water. How will we know what is original, what is not? Eventually, people will forget what the original stories are. So ito yung mga lagi kong naririnig, especially from people who are very academic, scholarly, mga ganon. So anyway, I will tell them na the reason why I write is most Pinoy know about Thor than we do of lamang. Diba? And not just that. If you ask people name a god from mythology, top 10, they probably could produce 10 names, pero the chances are having na kahit isa lang na Filipino gods is almost zero. That's how much we don't know, or we commonly don't know about our own stories. And one other thing I could tell you is if the reader enjoyed the story enough, they might look them up and they might learn more about it and, learn the original stories themselves. And another thing is, ito yung pinaka-importante, and this is the very reason why I promote writing mythologies, kahit ano pa yan, kahit gawin mo pang love team yung hindi talaga mag-love team na uso ngayon sa kabataan, is if we don't write about them, they will fade. So, next po. So anyway, as example, favorite monster ko pala, how vampire changed. So, a vampire started as a ghoul. Mas zombie siya kaysa what we know. So, when people are buried, they rise to the grave, from the grave, and then that's why people stake them in the chest para they don't rise up. Okay? So, anyway, it's a folklore from Eastern Europe, I think, na available throughout the medieval period. And then someone wrote the book about it, named it Dracula. So Dracula, inspired by Vlad Tepes, a real person, so turned him into the folk monster Dracula. So that's where we got the vampire mythology. So this particular author put in sex. So isipin mo, we started with a folklore which is ghoulish, and then he turned it into a noble person. Pogi na siya ngayon. Tapos charismatic na siya, sexy na siya. So, but we're still talking about the same thing. And then let's go on sa next slide. And then a movie came out. Hindi nila nakuha yung rights for the actual Dracula. So, they turned it into Nosferatu. So, binalik nila yung ghoulish roots. Kaya si Nosferatu pangit, mukha siyang bangkay. And then, dahil sa kakulangan ng budget, di nila alam kayang tapusin yung movie. So, binigyan nila siya ng weakness, sunlight. Pag naarawan siya, patay na siya. So, the original didn't have that. And then the folklore didn't have that. But ngayon, sobrang aware na tayo na sunlight is a vampire weakness, which original didn't have it. And then we have Interview with the Vampire. So si 𝗦𝗏𝗁, she came and turned them into sexual creatures suffering from loneliness. So this time around, ko na sila, I think bisexual na yata sila lahat ng vampire, I think. Yeah. So and they're all suffering from existential issues. Na yung mga ganong issue is not really what the old vampire, they're ghouls, they don't have existential issues, yung original version. But now lonely na sila, pero lahat sila pogi. Saka magaganda, which is very different from the original, but we're still talking about the same vampire. And then of course, Twilight came along. So yung weakness na sunlight ngayon, ginawa na nilang sparkling para lalo pa silang pumogi. At this time, it's more romance-based. Kasi di ba parang more on sex yung kay 𝗦𝗏𝗁. This one is love team. Mga teeny boppers na sila ngayon na may mga teen issues tulad ng going to school, yung popularity nila with classmates, mga ganon. So, as time goes on, what I'm trying to show you is folklores, mythologies, they change. And that's not something we need to stop. It's natural. So, next slide po. So, original vampires versus modern incarnation. So, masasabi ba natin na fake yung mga bago? Kasi si Twilight ay shiny, shimmering, splendid. Or are they also the same? Should all vampire stories be about the medieval ghoul from Eastern Europe? So that's why they change. So next po. So there is an ongoing conversation among creatives across time, language, and culture. So every time may isang creative, storyteller, poet, kahit ano pa yan, pati movie makers. When they tackle a myth or folklore, they change it kasi may personal bias tayo. Thus, no matter the change, they are still talking about the same creature redefined for their culture and time. Kaya nga sila nag-iiba. Cultures change, and as we grow and develop, we meet new challenges and we pose new questions. These creatures who has helped our ancestors define and tackle their world can still help us with our modern concerns. That is why they change, because we do. So the question remains, is it okay to change our own folklore and mythology? Kasi it's happening everywhere around us. It just doesn't happen with vampire. Pati yung mga gods ng ibang lugar, di ba si Rick Riordan? Di ba? They're Greek gods. Now they're school teachers. Or something. I didn't really read the book, sorry. But the idea stands. Next. Changing stories could erase the original. Yan yung lingering question. So the truth of the matter is there's no original version. of all the stories that we know. At least folklore and mythology. Next po. The sources of our original myth and folklore is usually oral tradition. So, they're passed by word of mouth. Pag kinukwento sa'yo ng lolo mo yung mga aswang encounters or aswang na stories from their kids, it's oral tradition. Hindi lang oral tradition yung may someone trained to memorize stuff and tell it to the community. So if you're talking about something, about folklore, about mythology, you're passing it to the next generation, to younger people, you're talking it with some friends at work, that's oral tradition. So yung exact idea natin ng exact word for word storytelling, it didn't exist back then until we have printing. Kasi once we've printed something, we have something to go back to verify kung yung sinabi ba natin ay hindi. Karamihan ng oral tradition, they would memorize something, and then if the idea is there, that's pretty much it. But we all know that the meaning of words change as time goes on. Words tulad ng salvage, here in the Philippines, it's negative. Pero it originally started as something positive, to save. So each generation, yung mga iba't ibang words natin, nag-iiba. So even if you preserve the actual words, the actual meanings in them would not be preserved. So ang oral tradition is basically a game of telephone that plays out across generations, cultures, and sometimes people. Kasi yung mga stories natin don't stay with us. We also bring it in other places. Kaya nga alam na natin si vampire, alam na natin si Odin, because it was brought here. Next. Another sources na sinasabi natin na printed, yung records ng mga praile, ng mga priest. So they're recorded from a foreign viewpoint and understanding. Isang example nga nung, since they're recording things about things they don't understand, and in languages that they're barely able to comprehend. Kaya kung gagamitin natin sila as the all-knowing sources that they were, medyo questionable siya. Because they always see it at their viewpoint, sa culture nila, hindi sa culture natin. And one other thing is yung syncretism that we know. So yung anting-anting culture, it's actually started from the combination of, ano tawag nito, ng mga religious sensibilities ng mga Filipinos before and Catholic na tinuro ng mga Spanish. So it's in a way it's a kind of evolution by hybridizing both beliefs into one. So next po. So why retelling myths and folklore matter? So mythologies and folklores are not just about the deeds of gods and how things came to be. These stories serve as windows to our ancestors and a vehicle to bring us into the world as they saw it. These stories tell us what they believed in, what they valued the most, and who they were. That's why it's important to keep telling about them. Kasi tulad nga ng sabi ni Rizal na hindi niya talaga sinabi, kailangan natin lumikod sa nakaraan para malaman natin kung sino tayo. So if we lose them, we might lose ourselves. So yun lang. May next pa ba? So anyway, what will you contribute to the conversation with our ancestors? Yan nga pala ay calling card ng main character dun sa story.
Okay, maraming salamat, KD. No? Si KD galing po yung Isabela. And thank you, KD. Si KD may baon siya ng mga libro niya. If you've seen the samples outside, they're very substantial volumes. Please consider approaching KD to purchase copies of the book. They're not very accessible. And we thank KD for actually having them with him. No? So KD and Mish, salamat. So Mish sort of gave us an idea what kind of communities the conversation of KD actually thrive in today. Diba? So may konteksto tayo ng community, ano yung pinag-uusapan nila, yung pinag-uusapan ni KD. With that, no, we'll turn to our last panelist, no? Jacob Ramos.
Hi, good afternoon. So you can call me. Hello. Yes. How I wanted to read and write stories when I grew up. I also don't come here necessarily representing the community which I am known for here, which is SEADS, but I have presented this talk to them, and I'm trying to get this subgenre of science fiction out there with their help. The reason why I point that out is because the way I treated my writing from college to my graduate studies is I did not necessarily surround myself with other writers. Because I wanted to pursue the track of science fiction, I surrounded myself with engineers. So SEADS is an engineering group. Uh, they specialize in arts, design, and engineering. Next slide. So to tackle the idea of science fiction in the country, I wanted to understand its context. Growing up, I noticed that just like my fellow writers here, science fiction in the Philippines as writers was not as prominent. Timothy Montes points out that because writers and readers here grew up reading rural stories, things like 𝗦𝗏𝗀𝗻𝗄, 𝗩𝗶𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗀 Ibong Adarna stories that were based and set in the rural country, that appears antithetical to what science fiction looks like in the West. Stories of the future, chrome, spaceships, whereas you won't see much stories in the countryside. Next slide. See, Jose Diliman, in his famous book, The Knowing is in the Writing, he points out the reason why Filipinos are less receptive to science fiction is because there's lacking, he points out a lacking critical scientific consciousness. So we may have an understanding of fantasy. We have a very deep rooted history of fantasy in the Philippines, but our understanding of science fiction doesn't go as far. It is a rather modern phenomenon, and we don't necessarily associate a lot of things with science. Next slide. That is not true, however, as we move to modern times today. PSF has given me this data. About a third of their identified writers write science fiction. So our writers are catching up. My favorite, of course, is Apollo Centennial, which is my first Filipino science fiction that I've read. Short story by Gregorio Brillantes. So he was who I considered a very seminal science fiction here in the Philippines. Next slide. But while the writers are catching up, our readers are still getting there. This is data from the National Book Development Board from 2023. And the only data I could find about science fiction, rather speculative fiction, much less science fiction, was in these two slides, where among genres read by children recreationally, only 23% read specfic. And they don't give any data on how much read the subgenre or the genre of science fiction. Among adults, that's not even present. Next slide. When I look academically, I only have one reading list as citation, but the data from UPIS, the high school here, there's only one sample of science fiction that they read in their reading classes, and it's by Ray Bradbury's The 𝗩𝗏. It's not even local, so we really don't have much samples of local science fiction here in our academic structure. Next slide. So I decided to find out the root of the problem the only way I knew how, and with the resources I had. I went to a subreddit, a PH book club, and I asked the question, Philippine science fiction, an exercise in futility. My favorite comment is the one I've highlighted here, like a space opera in this economy. We can't afford one, basically. So that's why I've titled this discussion, next slide, science fiction in this economy. So is it compatible? Next slide. So these are the three basic hesitations among science fiction readers or would-be local science fiction readers here in the Philippines. The first one, as mentioned, is it doesn't appear compatible with the Philippine economy. Ang hirap na natin sa DPWH, baka space program pa tayo. Philippine science is also looked at as not as competitive as foreign sciences, Western sciences. I grew up, my high school was in a science high school, and our section names were not Fidel Mundo or Gregorio Waizara. They were, of course, Darwin, Einstein. So these are not, the culture of science is not highlighted locally. Lastly, there is an academic hesitation as well. Inferior as a form of storytelling. Yes, we use the same meme. Was this a lot of the academics who view literature with a capital L see science fiction as, I think, to borrow from Miss Ana Sanchez, who is present in the room, I think, in her article "Waiting for Victory," she says one of the criticisms is that a lot of science fiction or genre is looked at as cosmetics, meaning we just there's this common saying, a horror story but in space. We add that but in space, so it's always you just add something to it, a layer of. So it's a horror story, but you put it with astronauts and aliens, Star Wars, stuff like that. Star Wars is just feudalism in space. So a lot of people view genre and science fiction specifically as that genre, but in space. But I have rebuttals, of course, to those, which is my next slide. So, of course, science historically is not for the rich. Gregor, I keep saying Gregor. This scientist who did hereditary studies on pea plants, I forgot his name, basically discovered the science of heredity with just pea plants. It's very cheap. Galileo's telescope was very not high class. It was very cheap and it wasn't as great. Newton, of course, discovered gravity with an apple falling on his head, which was free. So all of these things, science itself, the idea of being curious, of wanting to know something and to build upon it, doesn't necessarily require vast resources or money. And we must divorce ourselves from the idea that science itself needs to be this glowing chrome future. No? Of course, science is also not an import. So the picture there is of a UP, what's this, writer, Ambrosio, who cataloged ethnoastrology here in UP, where he pointed out that Orion's belt has a local name here. So we did astronomy among our ancestors. The local name for Orion's belt is Balatic. And of course, science fiction is not just cosmetic. It can be good social commentary, as seen by things like Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale and other writings. Next slide. So I wanted to approach science fiction also in that kind of sense. How has other genres or science fiction itself tried to relate itself better with its audiences? So I wanted to view that. And I found this article by Lou Grossman. And he states that the reason why steampunk has gotten a resurgence among other readers is because the technology we face today appears so monolithic. The iPhones that we have in our hands is specifically built so that we can't take it apart. We can't understand it. It's impenetrable. But steampunk, compared to that, is open. You can see the gears, the bits of steam moving around. It's something that appears more accessible. Genre can do that for you. Next slide. So we now have a dearth of other subgenres within science fiction that has been cited also, that has tried to relate itself with its local economies. So we have steampunk, of course, those that know them, dieselpunk, cyberpunk, biopunk, solarpunk, which is what's very close to what I'm trying to discuss now, Afrofuturism, which became really big with Black Panther, cassette futurism, and as mentioned previously, atompunk. Next slide. Next slide. Yes. So that's the kind of approach I'm trying to do. Create a subgenre, or rather renew a subgenre. So I'm trying to use the formula genre / punk to create some kind of new material that seems more accessible. Next slide. So island punk is the word that I'm trying to promote. Now, island punk is not a new term. It is apocryphally cited to things that like Gilligan's Island, Lord of the Flies, stories that deal with people who are castaways and trapped on islands, and they try to build civilization from the ground up again, using rudimentary technology. I'm trying to modernize this for Philippine science fiction. Next slide. So these are just definitions of islands. The most basic definition by Routledge is a piece of land surrounded by water. Of course, that could also involve continents. But the way Routledge goes further, next slide, is that he talks about islands and how they force connectedness, because if they're isolated, they can't interact with the rest of the world. There's no economy there. How there are borders surrounding the islands, and how specific islands can create identity. This doesn't just affect culture, this also affects biology, as we've seen some animals grow smaller or bigger, island dwarfism or insularism, and other things. I'll skip 2 slides from here. Next. Yes. So I also want to compress the idea of what defines an island by narrowing it down to this equatorial band. So the Philippines is definitely included in that, the Caribbean, but I am knocking out places like Japan because they're much more developed. Their climate also requires them to be much more resourceful. The cold means they have to put on more layers, they have to have more insulation in their places. Next slide. So I also want to identify island punk as post-colonial fiction. So while science is not an import, we have had technologies imported here. And we have to begin with that kind of acknowledgement. Next slide. And I want to give examples of technology as an import. So the jeepney is an example of that, where they are World War II jeeps that were deposited here and turned into commercial vehicles. We see that cropping up in other island countries. The tuk-tuk in Thailand is, of course, similar to our pedicabs. So we have similar technological and design languages. And this is, for me, very island punk. Next slide. Other writers have also converged on similar ideas. So this is Nalo Hopkinson. She's an example of a prominent Caribbean science fiction writer. Her story, Message in the Bottle, is about a person traveling into the past and trying to talk about beaches, basically. We also see that in our science fiction, Sync by Miss 𝗍𝗍𝗶𝘃, where she invests in getting a child after buying a child in the black market, an artificial child, after the loss of her own child. And it's a very heartbreaking story. Next. So the stories I've written since then, I've been following this kind of island punk theme or aesthetic or subgenre. The first one I would like to cite, next slide. The Final Bullet was a response to Gregorio Brillantes' The Polo Centennial, which covers the Mendiola massacre and how the person in this story, the woman who created the pillbox bombs used in the Mendiola massacre, basically formed her own amateur rocketry group and started flying rockets in the Philippines. Her work was abused, and that became the genesis of the story. This was also during the time of when Miss Universe happened, the first Miss Universe, where we had a Philippine winner, and her final question was about what would you do if the man on the moon met you today? So there's historical relevance there. The Iron Dream story, I got permission and endorsement from the 𝗍𝗶𝘁𝗶𝗶 weavers in South Cotabato to write this story about them after letting them read this. This is a story, next slide. So when it was the 50th anniversary of the Apollo moon landings, NASA released a lot of documentaries about how they did it, what technologies they used. The one that struck me so clearly was how the computers that they made were woven by old women. They used these magnetic cores, which look like beads, to represent bits, ones and zeros. And I thought to myself, that looks very much like Philippine handicraft. So I compared it to 𝗍𝗶𝘁𝗶𝗃. That piece of jewelry that you see there is the 𝗍𝗏𝗃, the girdle, the chainmail girdle worn by 𝗍𝗶𝘁𝗃 weavers. It looked very much like magnetic core memory, at least to me. And so I thought, why can the 𝗍𝗶𝘁𝗃 make a computer from scratch? So yes, they do have wire from their string instruments. If they just used iron instead of brass, they could weave technically a computer. And the story is about that. The last slide. So they talked about visiting the PNRI. I also did, but on my own. I just went up to the parking lot of Ayala Techno Hub. But basically, I also talked to the PNRI scientists about what would happen if a natural nuclear reactor appeared in one of our islands. So a natural nuclear reactor has happened in the past, like the 𝗩𝗏𝗃𝗏 uranium mines in Africa. What would happen if it appeared here in the Philippines? And that took place in northern Samar. Basically, they built their own nuclear reactor out of concrete and charcoal. Is what happened in the story. So these are the prominent ideas that I've been trying to promote using the subgenre of island punk. So next slide, yes, and that's basically island punk.
Thank you very much, Jake Ramos. That was amazing, no? This is the kind of conversations that are happening right now in communities. And what I really appreciate with Jake's talk, no, is that the definition of community or the definition of a playground is widened not just by writers speaking, talking among themselves, no, genre writers talking among themselves, but also writers who are engaging with, interacting with, people outside the field, with scientists, for example. So that is very amazing. Thank you for that, Jake, that insight. Now, instead of a conversation between our panelists, we will open the floor to questions from the audience. Yes, please.
I'm interested in submitting. I don't know how the submission is because in international submission circles. Oh, so I've been submitting to international submission circles, but usually they use 𝗏𝗃𝗃, which is an online it handles submissions. So I don't know how your Philippine Genre Stories works. So how do you submit there?
We are currently closed. I am still going to look for editor. We might open up by June next year. So right now we have sufficient till June next year. Maybe there'll be a short hiatus and then we will reopen. So stand by. I will be posting it on philippinegenrestories.com come that time. But in the meantime, enjoy the stories that are there. Thank you.
Yes,
Yes.
Makoy Tan, one of our PhD students.
MA pa lang po. Um, I'd, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the decline of print, how it's affected you guys, and where you see it going in the future here in the Philippines.
The divide in what?
The
Sorry,
decline of print.
I'd like Makoy is asking about the decline of print, how you see the effect of that in the Philippines. The decline of print.
Personally, I haven't felt it. Personally speaking, kasi publishing is gaining ground right now, especially with uh, genre stories. So we're actually releasing more books than before, and we're getting more and more readers as the years go by. At least based on my perspective. So, and most people I know, they like read digital copies of books, but they also own physical copies for collection, para maganda sa picture. And I've met a couple of, I mean, that's true. I do that myself. Pangalan to. And there are people I've met who told me, I don't know kung niloloko lang nila ako, but they've told me that they stopped buying foreign books because they can get them digital anyway. And then they just buy Filipino authored books to support the industry. So I've met a couple of people who told me that. So unless magkakilala sila, tapos niloloko nila ako, I think there's some sort of movement to support Filipino books.
Okay, Jake and then Mish, I think you want to say something.
Yes. So I can only speak to my experience in publishing. So the way I think of it in terms of priority or accessibility, right now for me digital is more accessible. So I do publish more online first. That's my priority. Always publish online first, and then a physical copy will be made available when I try to pursue that later. A physical or print book is also considered more premium and higher, more expensive, whereas people readily have phones. Because it's required by society nowadays to have online access. but uh, print is considered as a luxury, the way I see it today. So only when you save up for it do people buy print or publish in print.
Yeah. So this is just anecdotal, no? I'm not sure what you mean when you say the decline in print, like in traditional publishing, in global or local. Kasi what I'm seeing happening here sa local communities natin is there's actually more books being produced, but in smaller print runs, because of the, I guess, the boom in independent publishing. So, as opposed to, like, let's say, sa mga trad pub, they print mga 500 copies pataas. Now we have like 50, 100 authors, and then they're printing maybe 50 copies of their books, 100 copies at the most. So I don't know if you'd say that's a decline in print or not. But I do see that there are more readers, and because you have those smaller print runs, what people do then is they do pre-orders, diba? So you ensure that people actually read those 50 books that you've printed, versus you don't know how many people read the 1,500 copies that were printed by a bigger publishing house.
Q, would you like to say something? And then we'll
No,
go
I'm-
to Jeff,
Okay.
the right ones.
I'll throw the question back to Makoy or to all of you. PGS started as print. It's now digital. Would you buy if I make it print, if I have it published?
That's actually a marketing question.
Yes, I'm doing market research. I'm doing market. It's not, I have been approached by publishers to turn it, but I said, maybe bili ba? Diba? I mean,
Bili ba? Print?
oh, yun, dito. Kasi nandun kayo eh.
I think some in the
No,
audience.
no, I'm throwing it back to you guys. What do you think? Give me, okay, let's raise hands. Who would consider, even just consider strongly, not a yes. Raise your hand to buy a PG. Wow. Wow. No kidding? Oh, bolero. Thank you. Okay, done. I'm done. Throwing now to the next question.
Thank you, Jeff.
To kanina po, I appreciate, by the way, the writings that you guys have done. And to circle back dun sa mga readings ng mga kabataan natin, yes, 40s na po. I would like to ask if there are authors, Filipino authors to be exact, that you would recommend to read for middle graders. Kasi my eldest is 10. So far, she has loved 𝗍𝗶𝘁𝗶𝗹. So if you guys would recommend any of the books that are currently published or will be published, that will be great. So I can take notes po sana. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with Q.
Yeah,
No?
forgive me, Jel, but this might be self-promotion. I am also very not clear on definition of middle grade to young adult, but the FFYA, how's that? The Filipino fiction for young adult, that might be it. No, too old. I don't know.
Nowadays po kasi, at least from the teacher's perspective po, one, it has to have morals. Two, it has, yeah, I know, right?
So is that fable?
Non-secular. Opo. At saka, kung ang pinagbabasihan po kasi ngayon is like, it can't be too magical, like similar to Harry Potter and Neil Gaiman.
Sorry,
But
okay.
it can't be too scary, similar to the Hardy Boys / Nancy Drew. Ang mga tinitingnan na po ngayon na libro would be similar to Geronimo Stilton, may mga...
I cannot recommend any Pinoy. I'm sorry. I cannot think of any. That sounds like very restrictive. Ikaw na lang.
Thank you.
Ako, kasi nanay ako, guys. So, yun panganay ko is 13. So, middle grade. Right. Okay. So, locally, from OMF literature, middle grade books, they have chapter books. There's Light Seeker from Sofia Antonio, which is para siyang parang fable-ish type. Yan. So, and then there's also by Jackie Frankeli, Anak ng Pandesal, or the Baker's Daughter, which one na palangka actually. And that's hindi siya fantasy. At saka may moral siya. So pasok yun sa inaano mo. Yun kay Cupcake, yun Wago. Ang ba yun? Yung may malaking mechanical crab?
𝗩𝗁𝗃𝗃.
Yes, yeah.
Oh,
Yes, oo.
yung aliw.
Tai Chi.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
kay
what I'm
cake.
trying to-
Yes. Oo. So, yun. Middle grade. Yun. Wayong alimagnum. Alimagnum.
I think Waya.
Basta yun, guys. Yun.
Kay Joel.
Oo, yun. Middle grade din yon. Hindi ko alam kung YA or middle grade yung kanyang
Wings of the
trilogy.
Locust.
Yun,
Oh,
yan.
Wings of the
yun,
Locust.
Wings of the Locust, yung Alipin
That's
trilogy.
YA yun.
Yes. Middle grade ba yon or
Hindi.
YA siya?
𝗩𝗁𝗃 din. 𝗩𝗁𝗃.
Yes, same. Same author. Yes.
Tsaka baka masyadong magic.
Baka masyadong magic for you yon. But that's also good. Okay. Yeah.
Mm.
Mm-mm.
Just that, if we are asked ourselves,
Mm.
what can we recommend, especially since I've established a
Yeah.
book club for homeschooling kids at our town. Naghahanap din po kasi yung
Mga
mga
local.
Yeah.
mga tao sa amin, what can they read? And of course, I cannot really have them read Hieronymo Stilton all over again, especially since they're growing up. And I am promoting Filipino authors po.
Yes.
So I would this list would help out. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I hope you can check those out. Mamaya mag-usap pa tayo, may mga...
Yes,
That's
please.
a lesson. There's a
you.
gap there that you guys can fill.
Yes, I think here we have someone.
Yeah.
No, no,
There.
no,
I saw
no,
someone
there.
raising
Yeah.
their hand. Yeah, there.
Thank you. So my name is 𝗩𝗁𝗃𝗃, and I actually like to, well, Jake brought this up when he mentioned science fiction in this economy. It actually brought up one particular, well, two related questions. Like on the one hand, you still have the leftover, I guess, inertial impact of social realism, not just in the academe, but also among, I guess, the educated everyman out in the street. Like, even from those I've known, like, I'm talking from the outside looking in, like, there's still this perception that even though there is a more visible presence of genre fiction, like, there is this question is it like real life? Is it realistic? Because there's this perception that it's not the real world. And at the same time, you also have this idea that there's no money to be made there. So you end up with that brain drain question of creatives moving to the US thinking that they'll earn more money there. So how can Filipino publishers and creatives somehow bolster the image of genre fiction without either antagonizing the lingering impact of social realist, meaning publishers or creators or the academe, without also alienating those who are already, to begin with, already skeptical of it from past experience?
Thank you. Would anyone like to answer that? Jake?
Thanks.
Uh-uh.
Thanks. Thank you for the question. So, while there is an academic push to write more Philippine-centric fiction, in fact, that's what I grew up in. Our workshops, we all went to Diliman. The prominent discussion there was, why are you writing more fiction that is not in the Philippines? Our country's so beautiful, why not write here? Now, this is a real thing. It has been pointed out also by Resil Mojares. The Filipino is haunted by his own history. But I have to say that while it is a real thing that may look like a gatekeep, Filipino writers are just writing whatever they want these days. Whether or not those boundaries exists, whether or not they're self-identified as Filipinos in the writing. So it exists from an academic standpoint, but Filipino writers have ignored that for their own choices of writing.
Q? Thank you. Thank you, Jake. Q?
Yeah, sir. Well, first of all, I'll speak from my perspective. I'm an old guy. I'm the oldest in the room. I frankly don't give an F anymore what people think, what I do. I mean, I've reached that point. I mean, long ago when I met obstacles to what I wanted to do. So yeah, I just write what I want. And I'll go back to what I said a while ago. Quick answer. A story is a story is a story. If it resonates, people will take something away from it. As an example, I love 𝗍𝗏𝗏's Game, Orson Scott Card. I may not like the author's politics or what that person, but it taught me something. That's a science fiction book where I took something from deeply. Likewise, if I can use the traditional white writer thing, I like social realism of Ernest Hemingway. I took a lot from his Clean, Well Lighted Place short story. I took a lot from like Hills Like White Elephants and all that thing. I learned a lot. Um, believe me, those things struck me so hard also, equally as much as Ender's Game when I read it. A story is a story is a story. When you read it, it will resonate with you if you have the imagination to capture what it is. That's why I encourage everyone to read. I encouraged everyone to read whatever they want in whatever language genre by anyone from anywhere within your comfort zone and without. That's my answer. That's my quick answer.
Thank you very much. Just one last question. Yes, here.
Hello. Sorry.
No, wait, no, both of you have to read.
Okay, last two down. But we'll hear both questions before we turn to the panel.
Question for all four. It was addressed a while ago that most Filipino sci-fi stories are just we should avoid rather we should avoid the trap of writing stories, Filipino stories in space. Just adding the two words in space, right? So with that said, what aspects for you guys of our culture and our reality is actually ripe for science fiction?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And then Ira Domingo, our graduate.
This is a medyo iba yung question. So, given the answers kanina na only Western or foreign stories were readily available here in the Philippines, I think the number you gave was 1 to 24?
1:20.
Yeah. Do you think that local vendors or bookstores can have more involvement in the promotion of Filipino written literature?
Okay, so maybe this was addressed to Q, no? Who gave the figure? Everyone.
Dr. Vlad.
Sorry.
Dr. Vlad gave.
Dr. Vlad gave the. Okay, so let's start with the first question on science fiction, beginning with Jake, no, and then we'll go to Ira's question. This time, beginning with Q. Then we'll move.
What aspects of Philippine history is ripe for science fiction? There's always the blanket answer of everything, but I don't want to be too callous. I do personally, I tend to look into Philippine mythology. The nuclear reactor story was tied to Biringan, the mythical city. 𝗍𝗶𝘁𝗍𝗀, of course, has was his ancestral aspects, and also history, where the final bullet story was about the Mindoro massacre, Década Sitienta. So all of these things really are avenues for inspiration for science fiction, Philippine science fiction. The way I tend to write stories is I find an interesting scientific fact that I like, engineering, natural phenomena, and try to relate it. It's the reverse of how some Western science fiction writers do it, where they already know that they have a strong standing in science, so they write characters and then build a science fiction story on that. I try to look for the Filipino aspects in it. So I see somebody who wove a computer. We have weavers here. Why not write why can't they make a computer? So turn it on its head.
Thank you, KD.
We can do steampunk stories set in, turn of the century, with the, what do you call that? Sila Rizal and things like that. So with the Ilustrados, we can do something like that. I think we need more stories set in that era. Kasi ngayon there are lots of stories na set sa na fantasy, like what I'm doing, wherein we write about pre-colonial time period. So we could also write something about that. Or we can do something about the Japanese invasion. What if when the Philippines was invaded, we had, a secret technology like Wakanda or something? So there's you just need a good idea and run with it, basically. So the important part is making your characters Filipino and making the place Philippines. Don't just put flags there and 𝗍𝗶𝘀𝗶𝗃 people, but they think and react like Americans. That's the important part, because if you do that, it's still not the Philippines. Yun lang.
Mish?
𝗪𝗏𝗀𝗃 naman, ang hirap ng tanong mo. Teka. Sige, so I'll answer the question, pero ipopromote ko si Right Ones. So actually our punong lingkod, si Julius nandyan. Hi Julius. And so the Right Ones is one of the writing groups that Kadi and I belong to. And currently we do seasons. So parang this is like the season now of what we're writing is biopunk. And I realized ang dami palang pwedeng, yon aspect of science fiction na we can do locally. Ang daming possibilities with biopunk. So one of the things that me and another writer in the group were talking about was, for example, here in the Philippines, surrogacy is illegal, diba? So imagine that. You have that idea, surrogacy is illegal, okay? Because of the, it's exploitative, diba? Given our current economic status. Add some science fiction in there. Just play around with that idea. What if suddenly you're able to have surrogates, diba? Meron tayong suddenly underground technology or something. Interesting. Meron tayong yung biopunk season namin, we were talking about yun sa RITM. So diba, you guys are familiar with the RITM, Royal Institute of Tropical Medicine, which is in Alabang, diba? So what if during martial law time, there was like, I don't know, mga experiments done there. Oh, biopunk, something, diba? And then, yun. But one of the things that I'm also like not connected to, parang weird nun. Have experience with is I worked at an NGO that dealt with human trafficking. Human trafficking, biopunk, science fiction, something to think about as well. So, yun yung sagot ko right now. Just because we're doing it sa writing group namin, we're looking at biopunk.
Thank you, Q.
I'll answer Isa's question na lang, since they answered your questions, sir. You asked about booksellers and publishers, right? I'll turn it around in the head. I'm going to pretend I am a publisher, that I own a publishing company, or that I own National Bookstore or Fully Book. Hey, that would be great. But I'm going to pretend, no, I'm going to be a capitalist and pretend I'm not there. Why wouldn't I be looking for a Filipino writer who'll be a bestseller? Why? Because that person is going to bring people into my stores, foot traffic, which will give me sales. So my answer is yes, they are looking. I really do believe that these publishers are looking for writers whose books will sell. The commercial versus the niche is something, of course, a publisher within themselves will have to balance based on what their objectives and goals are, based on their categories, based on what they want to push, but based on what they're known for. But who wouldn't to say if you owned 𝗍𝗍𝗀 Publishing Incorporated Philippines and you want to publish the next best-selling J.K. Rowling, right? Wouldn't you want that? So that is, you would be actively looking. So there is an opportunity. Having said that, guys, it's a global economy now. It's a global capitalist economy. The world is looking for that next best-selling writer, that next J.K. Rowling. And there are publishers all around the world. There's the top 5, the big 5, as they say, Macmillan, Penguin, etc. But there are all those others. It's an open field worldwide. So yes, the local ones are looking for it too. That's my answer to you. They are. It's driven by the profit motive. Okay.
Thank you. Mish, would you like to say something about that? You do independent publishing as well, no?
Yeah. So more on well both trad and indie publishing. Teka, pa-repeat ng question. Ano yun? Sorry. Hindi, okay lang.
Do you think local bookstores can have more involvement in the promotion?
Bookstores.
Bookstores specifically. Short answer, yes. Longer answer, I think some of them are trying that naman now, no? Like yun sa, like nung Halloween, yun fully booked, nakita ko may post sila ng mga local horror writers and authors, and then yun yung pinromote nila. So I think there are some efforts naman for the bookstores. Can there be more? Sure. Should there be more? Yes. But also I think we need din kasi more bookstores kasi right now it's just fully booked and National Bookstore. So I still remember the days when there was Goodwill, there was a different bookstore, there was other smaller independent books, Power Books. May Power Books pa dati. And I think that was really helpful, no, in terms of like getting more local authors and local books out there kasi maraming venue. So I think, yeah, parang Ewan ko kung nasagot ko tanong mo or medyo nag-divert ako. But yun.
Thank you. Would KD and Jake want to answer? No. Okay. There are small bookstores, no, like Mount Cloud, for example, in Baguio. They aggressively promote local books. No, everything's fine in Makati. Also does that. So lately there are Mount Cloud has been there for a while, but lately there have been newer and smaller bookstores that do that. So thank you very much. No, I'm sorry we don't have time for more questions. So at this point, I think we have a very good idea of three things. Let's just wrap it up with three things. No, first, access is still a problem. No, although communities engaged in genre do have a huge effect on literature. We see now that crossovers are more common than we think, diba? Access to works of local authors still an issue, and more can be done. The other thing is that, communities do exist, and so Mel, I hope something to look forward to is there's plenty of groups to join. Location is no longer an issue because fortunately, these groups can operate online as well. One thing I think that we should also be on the lookout for is how do we ensure safe spaces, that our communities and groups are safe spaces for its members, no? And hopefully, the groups that we've talked to today and the groups that we will be in touch with in the future, for this is not just a one-off thing. We intend to create a directory of such groups so that we can network, connect, and collaborate with each other. No, hopefully we will be able to discuss this and all of the other very interesting conversations we've had today. Very thankful to Q, to Mish, to KD, all the way from Isabella and Jake. KD and Jake gave us a very fascinating insight into what these groups are actually talking about today. Di ba mas exciting kaysa sa classroom? Yeah. Maybe we should invite them to our classrooms as well. There's much that we in the university and in traditional literary spaces can learn from our reading and writing communities. That's for sure. No? So at this point, I'd like to call upon Professor Rex Nepomuceno, to come up here, Deputy Director of Likhaan ICW, to present our guests with their certificates.
Thank you very much po, Ma'am Ken. Okay lang po. So let me read through the certificates lamang po. Panayam sa Panitikan, popular, literary and in between, Philippine genre fiction today. This certificate of appreciation is given to the following: Kenneth Yu, Michellan Sarile-Alagao, Kadi Serafica, Matthew Jacob F. Ramos, Christine V. Lau, and Mia Tijam for participating as panelists in, again, the Panayam sa Panitikan, Episode 9, Popular, Literary, and In-Between Philippine Genre Fiction Today, presented this November 6, 2025 at the University of the Philippines, Diliman, signed by Dr. Vladimir B. Gonzalez, Director of the Likhaan UP Institute of Creative Writing, and myself, Assistant Professor Rex Nepomuceno, Deputy Director of the Likhaan UP ICW. Muli po, maraming salamat sa ating panelists.
Then may we call upon Director Dr. Gonzalez to please join us for a short photo, and then we will proceed with very short closing remarks from Professor Nepomuceno.
And also, I'd like to present, of course, another certificate to Professor Tin Lau, Christine V. Lau, for moderating the episode for today. the audience?
Yes. Explosive.
But okay po, just to close our program for today, nais po namin magpasalamat mula sa likhaan, UP Institute of Creative Writing, sa Philippine Genre Stories, sa Christian Writers Fellowship, sa Philippine Speculative Fiction Society, sa SEADS, sa The Right Ones, at sa Department of English and Comparative Literature para sa matagumpay na paglo-launch ng particular na episode na ito ng aming panayam sa panitikan. Nais ko lang din pong pasalamatan ang aming project research assistant na nag-organize at nag-head ng ano na to, no? Si 𝗦𝗍𝗶𝗶𝗃. Ayan po, nariyan po siya sa likod. Maraming salamat siyempre po sa tech team, sa lahat ng project research assistants at admin namin sa likhaan. At gayon din po sa Dean's Office. Things that genre lends itself to ay mga concerns din ng marami sa contemporary na na concerns ng arts, humanities at ng performance. It lends itself well to the folk, to community engagement, to the eco-critical, to island studies and island thinking, to post-colonialism, to feminism, to indigenous knowledge systems. Of course, all of these things ay kaya rin naman gawin syempre ng literary fiction, but not with the same attitude. That's why I think genre, for the most part, is a type of attitude. It's a defiance, a refusal, hindi lamang ng literary hierarchy, but ways kung paano tayo nagpa-publish, kung paano natin pinapag-isipan ang dissemination ng ating works. It invites a communal ethos, an attitude that involves collective participation and a more porous, more friendly attitude towards appropriation, reappropriation. We have indie publishing, we have fanfic, conventions, transmedial strategies, uncreative writing strategies that nagpapakalat ng kanilang mga works via word of mouth at para pasapasahan lamang from hand to hand. Genre thrives in strategies that are grassroots, but also mycological, because I'm a nerd for mushrooms. They network, they spread like mycelia underground, and the works sprout like mushrooms, nutritious, dangerous, and psychedelic. And of course, the thing about genre is that it always engages the body. Pag nagbabasa tayo ng horror, alam natin yan. Pag nagbabasa tayo ng crime fiction, pag nagbabasa tayo, always ang speculation at ang forward thinking sa genre is a tool for liberation, and always ang movements for emancipation, whether it be literary or political, should always be experimental, should always be speculative. Genre is punk, genre is an attitude. Maraming salamat po.
With that, we'd like to thank everyone for being such a great audience, such an open, understanding audience. It was a pleasure to be with you all this afternoon. This is Christine Lau, 𝗍𝗍𝗃, CAL, UP Diliman, signing off po. Please join us at the next event. Thank you very much. May pagkain po. Ayun, please pick up your release.